It's like we almost don't give people the opportunity and chance to like change and be better versions of themselves, because it's like once you're labeled, that's who you are and there's no changing that. And it's like you could be someone who's been like fucked over 1,000,000 times and had fuck boys be the ones to make you essentially a whore.
Yeah.
And then you can completely change. It's so hard to like change that, but I feel like it's so accepted for a guy to be like, he used to be a fuck boy,
Like, now I'm ready to
and
settle
now
down.
he's so ready to settle down, he's just looking for Mrs. Right. Whereas like I don't feel like we ever hear that for a woman who's like, oh, she used to be a whore and now she wants to get knocked down. It's like, nah, that girl's trash, she's been everywhere.
Chemical X.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Chemical X podcast. I'm your girl Alessia.
I'm your girl Veronica, and as usual, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and leave us 5 stars on all audio platforms. And by the way, guys, our merch is out, so if you haven't had a chance to snag a hat, go check it out, chemicalxpodcast.com. We have some really cute trucker hats, really cute baseball caps, and get yourself one this summer because they are very cute.
Snag a hat. That kind of rhymed, honestly.
Snag a hat.
I was,
Snag a hat, snag a hat, snag a hat.
I was into it. So Veronica and I have been just talking about what topics we can talk about here on the podcast.
We spoke about everything
We
in this
spoke
world.
about everything in this world. When you guys ask us to do topics, I'm like, do you even love us? Have you even watched our episodes? We spoke about every red flag, every green flag,
Every ick.
every ick.
We've destroyed men and back, destroyed women and back. We've self-help, no help. We've done everything. We've
And
done it
I
all.
get why you guys are like, please give us more story times. Like,
You know what the thing is? It's like you say a story, but you need to give the whole context to the story. And then you also need to throw every person included in that story under the bus when you
we
say
have
the
no
story.
friends after this. We have no friends left.
It's really difficult. And throw yourself under the bus. You basically just throw yourself in the garbage.
Well, we ignore us at this point.
Well,
we're already in the garbage.
I am the garbage. I'm actually the garbage man.
I'm the garburator.
Guys, listen. But this week we had a hot topic. We spoke about it a little, kind of hookup culture, but we wanted to dive into like a different version of it. Dive right in. As I said last episode, bathing cap off limits. So Alessia, no goggles, no bathing cap. Let's dive right in. Raw dog it. So last episode we ended off speaking about kind of like, why do we put it always on women? Like, why do we always put it on women to have to
Take care of our safety.
Yeah, take care of our safety.
Safety. Oh my god.
There we go. Anyways, we spoke a little bit about like why it's always on women to have to take care of our own safety and protect ourselves, and how like what I was going to end off on saying, and just kind of like brings us into this topic, is kind of the whole thing of equality. And now my point of view on equality, and first of all, I would consider myself a feminist because I do believe in like having equal rights and equal opportunities. But I do believe, and there's no denying, that there is a difference between men and women. And I think as women, we have a very different experience than men do. And I think men, like, not saying that either one is harder, I just think they're very different. And it's hard to be like, we've lived the same life, we've had the same experience, and we're equal in that sense.
Because we haven't.
We're just different.
And there's certain things we're just never going to understand about men. And same goes for women. There's some things that men will just never understand. And that's okay. And that's what makes us like amazing together.
Yeah. And I don't think that we need to be, I believe that anyone can do anything if they put their mind to it. And I think we all should have the opportunity and the ability to do it. Yeah. But like, it doesn't mean that we always need to be like equal in the sense where we're exactly the same.
I think that's where I get confused with the definition of feminist, because I feel like when we were even having this conversation months ago, I was like, I don't believe that we are the same. Like, there are definitely differences from both of us.
Yeah.
The difficult part about that is that how are we supposed to technically have the same roles and opportunities if we're not the same? I think that's what people have a hard time like understanding.
For sure. And I agree, and I think people see it very differently. I think sometimes you tell someone like, oh, I'm a feminist, and they think like you don't wear a bra, you don't shave under your arms, like they
You
just,
don't,
like, there's
yeah,
like
and
a-
it's like if you're a feminist, then you don't expect somebody to be picking up the bill.
Yeah.
And it's like that's where I've even had a hard time
Yeah.
really fully understanding the meaning of it, because you can 100% at your core be a feminist and still want to be taken care of. It's really just like the differences between us, but the same opportunity. So I don't know if I ever said this story, but my dad, the way he proposed to my mom was just not a good, it wasn't good.
Okay.
He sucked at the proposal. He decided to take my mom's engagement ring and throw it in with a bunch of her, jewelry, affordable jewelry. So that's what he did. He put it in, and then as she was getting dressed, she went through it. She skimmed right through it, because how can you tell the difference between a diamond ring and her jewelry, right? Like it can get all mixed in. And that's kind of the thing with affordable jewelry. When it looks good and it's shining like the same old gold stuff, then how can you tell the difference?
Absolutely. And you know where you can get yourself some gorgeous, affordable jewelry is at everyjewels.com. So check them out, because they have everything you need to be glitz glammed, stacked up this summer, and maybe even a fake engagement ring. So guys, don't forget to use our discount code.
Chemical X at checkout to receive 20% off your entire order.
And don't make the same mistake that Alessia's dad made. Well, they ended up married, so. The same opportunity, I still think, like, look, you can consider yourself a feminist and believe that bills should be split and believe that you want to do just as much and put in 50%.
Right.
No problem. I think you can still be a feminist and want to have a more traditional dynamic in a relationship. I think you would also be a feminist and want to have a more dominant dynamic in a relationship. I think that your taste, your dynamic that you look for in a relationship doesn't necessarily mean that you believe women shouldn't have the same opportunities as men. And I think that's where people get mixed up. For me, feminism is just believing that men and women should have equal rights and equal opportunities, which I truly do believe. I think everyone should have access to the same things, you know? And it's not about who does it better, and it's not about like like what's more of the general. It's just like we all should have access to do what we want to do, and with that access, choose what it is we want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the same thing with like...
Do you think, though, that we're allowed to be like that and then also have all these requirements that don't necessarily equal up to things that would be feminist mindset?
I mean, again, like I said, I just
Let's
think
maybe give examples.
I think, like, for example, splitting the bill.
Yeah.
You know, like, I feel like that's like, okay, well, how can you be a feminist if you don't believe in splitting the bill? Okay, for example. But the way that I see it, it's just like, when it comes to splitting the bill, I don't feel like that has to do with me having opportunities in life. You know what I mean? I think I should still be able to have a driver's license, still be able to vote, still be able to have the same job as you, and still have a dynamic where you pick up the bill, because we have a more traditional dynamic where you take care of like providing a little bit and I take
Right.
care of other more traditional things.
Where I feel like men will sometimes see it as like, well, if I'm the one technically paying the bill and I'm like the masculine energy, then I'm probably the man who's like bringing in the dough, which is why I'm essentially paying the bill, because you're a feminine, you're making less money than me. I work a job where, unfortunately, because I'm a man, I make more money. So that's why I'm kind of covering the bill.
Yeah.
So like I totally, I'm with you. I'm 100% like a feminist, but I don't want like, I want a more traditional dynamic.
And what I think, and I think it's going to change over time, I think we're at a certain place, we're at like a crossroads in society where there's so much equality and push for equality happening, but then still like the pushback of traditional dynamics that we've been we've been raised to see. We've all been raised to see traditional dynamics. So for us, it comes naturally in a way to be like, I want a man who's going to pay my dinner, or like who's going to do this. But then we're a little less traditional where we're not like, I want to stay home and not work, and like I shouldn't have a job. And like we still have these more pushed forward, like society forward things.
I think that's definitely where the imbalance happens.
And
for
I think
sure.
I always say this, I think, you know, in like 20-30 years there's gonna be more of like a clear-cut mindset of like, this is where we're moving towards. But I feel like because this kind of new wave is so new, we have that like like head to head of traditional versus like the new wave. So it's very hard for us to be like, yeah, I'm a feminist, but like now everything's 50-50 because we only just got to the point of being able to almost make the same dollar that a man makes.
Yeah.
So somebody gave a really good example
That's so
actually,
true.
and I really liked it, and I think it explains kind of well. It's more so in like the I don't remember if I said this on the podcast before, but it's more so on like it's an example that's used for like racism. Okay, so it's like a white man has worked for the last 400 years and made all this money and was able to have generational wealth and made money. And now like the same black man who wasn't able to have those opportunities, now they're coming in and be like, okay, you can have access to this as well, and now you can work and make the same amount that I'm making for the same job, right? So now he comes in and he's here, but he's not actually here because this guy has all these years of being able to be ahead. Whereas you're just saying, okay, yeah, you could come along and be with me now too. You're not actually at the same level. You're starting down from here. Do you get what I'm saying?
And time is the real currency.
And that's the thing. It's like, as a woman, for so long, we did not have these opportunities. So now we do. And now we have the ability to make the same dollar as a man, let's say, have the same opportunities for the most part. But it doesn't mean that we're equal. We're still all the way down here because we have years and years of not being able to vote, not being able to have a job, not being seen as smarter, not being seen as, could be a boss, could be a CEO. Like, we've only just gotten that. So I don't feel like we're at par. And that's why I really love that analogy because, and I don't really feel like that I explained it as well.
No, you did.
It's like, yeah, we're here, but you have all this and we're just starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
So even though right now,
and we all know like experience is everything.
Yeah,
so if
like,
you only get the experience now versus somebody having it 10 years ago, we all know like you learn through experience and that's when you grow, make more money and everything.
Yeah.
So we're not at the same stage.
We're not at the same
because now we're
stage.
starting in our experience versus you've been going through everything
Exactly.
already.
So it's like, yeah, sure, maybe in 100 years from now when my kids are going to be CEOs and their kids are going to be female CEOs and there's going to be a female president and everything is going to be so equal where it's like there is a lot of female power and we're being raised to see these women that are at the top. I don't feel like we're there yet. So I think it's very difficult to be like, I think it's very difficult to have that like clean cut of like, well, why do you expect 50% of like, why do you expect him to cover the bill if you believe in feminism?
Do you think that at that point it'll be more women, let's say, quote unquote, splitting the bill because of, I guess, it completely changing and us kind of feeling like we're more leveled up in a sense?
I think it would make sense because I think the argument of, well, if we both make the same amount of money, why should I be paying the bill? I think that argument is valid and it does make sense. But like when my explanation is what I just said. But I think, in 20, 30 years, maybe 40, 50 years, let's say, I think there would be more so of that mindset of like everyone is 50-50. And I think in other places already, like for example, like Europe, I feel like there's a lot of European places where like they don't believe in covering the bill or like certain things like that. But then there's also certain areas that are a little bit like further back in mindsets where women still don't have the rights that we have here that still hold those traditional
So wherever
values.
technically everyone has the same rights, then that's probably where it's going to blossom the quickest and it's going to start a more domino effect in like 50-50 relationships.
So I can imagine in the future, I think already now there's a lot of people that do believe in 50-50 and do split the bill and all that stuff. I think 50 years from now, it'll probably be even more common just because like it's all about education and it's all about people are raised, So we're raised a certain way with like a sprinkle of traditional. So we're going to be growing up with a sprinkle of traditional.
That's why we sometimes think like over generation and generation, it might kind of just like disappear. Kind of like my Italian. I barely know it now. My kids are not going to really know it unless I put them in school. But like everything kind of gets lost eventually.
And it's all for a reason too, like there was
because things change,
life changes. There was reasons why there was a time where women didn't work and now it's not the same. Like back then it was very important for women to take care of the kids, very important to like nurture them, and it was very important for the men to go out and get the food and get whatever to make sure the family's surviving. But we've evolved. We don't need to still stand by those same traditional.
Now my question is, are we kind of toxic then for being like, we expect men to pay the bill? Like, is that something more that's like a luxury now then? If you're saying that we're kind of evolving and now we have the same rights as men, like, is this something that we're asking for that we shouldn't technically be? Like, I know, like, whether it's technically right or not, those are my, that's what I expect, and that's what I'm gonna lean towards. But then I think it's kind of wrong of us then a little bit to want that.
I have two explanations. So first one is because, like I said, we still have that sprinkle of traditional. We still have this mindset and what we see and what we were raised to know. It's very hard for us to be like, oh yeah, I don't deserve this. But then the other hand is what I initially said at the beginning of how like we can have the same opportunities but not be equal in the sense of like be identical. Like we're very different. Men and women are very different. We provide different things. At the end of the day, a man will never, no matter what he does in this world, will never be able to experience what it is to give birth to a child. And the thing about like pregnancy, for example, it's not just like a 9-month thing. It's something that changes the rest of your life. You're giving up your body, you're giving up your health. A lot of people have serious health complications after pregnancy.
Well, literally they've showed videos of just like a man only gets better with age. He's out there in the gym, working on his body, focusing on his career. So it's like, yeah, we don't go through the same things.
We don't. And like the reality is like, obviously I don't want to put it down to like pregnancy and childbearing, but it has a lot to do with it that like as a woman, we give up so much to a man, let's say, and inevitably like the more boyfriends you have, the more times you've been in a relationship, the more people you've been with, as a woman, society deems your value to go down. So let's say I had 10 boyfriends, my value is down. Every time I get a new boyfriend, my value goes down. So when I make when I take a risk and I start dating someone, I'm taking a chance on you. So this is an investment that I'm making, right? I'm investing my value into you. So as a man, and this is the traditional, is like you prove yourself by investing financially. Like I could provide for you.
I will give you a safety net.
I will give you the safety of investing in financially, and you're going to invest your value in me, right? And your commitment. So I still think that there is an exchange done, even though we have the same ability to make the same amount of money. I'm still investing and taking a risk by being with somebody that I need some sort of even security back. And that tends to be financially. So it's like, as a man, you're taking a woman out on dates. That's you investing in the potential relationship. You're investing. And yes, maybe she won't have your kids for 5, 6, 7 years, but you've invested to the point where when she does have your kids, like it's not like, oh, I invested 10K. Now
I think let's not even bring kids into this because some people don't even want kids. And like, regardless of the kids or not, I don't think that should be a factor of you wanting to like create safety for her. And I think just the value and like, let alone knowing that women go through such different things, pregnancy or not, is why we should feel safety and protected.
Yeah. And I think as a man, like, you know, for example, a guy could get out of a relationship at 35 and still be seen as a fucking eligible bachelor. He's in his prime.
We always say it. Men in their late 30s are in their prime versus like women's prime is like 20s, early 20s, and which is a huge gap.
Yeah. So that's why that's the thing where that's where I see the investment. It's like, I'm investing my value and taking a chance with you, and you're investing with me with safety, which tends to be financially. So it's like, that's the investment we're making. It doesn't mean we're going to stay together, because that's what an investment is. You never really know.
But the thing with that is like, I think in our generation today and like hookup culture, it's even scary for us to want to feel like, okay, like I'm going to give up my work ethic and like really focus in like you providing for us, when we still kind of feel like at some point like you might leave us for someone else. So it's like, yeah, you might be providing all this for us, but I'm still having your baby. I'm still like losing a part of myself while you're kind of gaining. I don't want to say gaining, but kind of.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, that's why I feel like we're at this pit where like women want to be, we're feminists. We want to have the same opportunity because we want to also know that we're okay on our own.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing too. I think men want to split the bill less because they don't want to invest in relationships. And that's the reality. It's like, you talk to any guy, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to take a girl out on a date if I just want to fuck her, because that's the thing. They're not going to spend money on someone that they don't want to be with. So as a woman, we feel like, okay, if you're going to provide for me and buy my dinner and pay for me, then that means you're investing somewhat in the relationship and you're investing in me. So we almost see that as like a security blanket. Like if I would go on a date and somebody would say like, oh, let's split the bill. For me, that would translate as like, you're not taking me seriously and like you're not willing to invest in me as a person.
And when you invest in someone, it could be it could go amazing
or
and
it could go bad.
It could go bad, but that's just the thing with investing is you're gambling.
And we're both losing. As a woman, if I invest in a relationship,
I'm wasting my time, my precious years, essentially,
which are more valuable.
Which are more valuable,
because they're more limited. By the way, that's the only reason why they're more valuable.
Yeah, and the man is, having to pay and provide.
Right, exactly. So I still think even with us being able to make the same amount of money and still being able to have the same opportunities, that there still is a big difference and there still needs to be an exchange of value versus security. And I think maybe if one day we evolve to no longer see women's value going down, then maybe it won't be as important for men to prove themselves and for men to provide to us. But right now we're in this place where it's like, we need to know that you're investing in us because our value is so easily lost in a man's eyes. It's like, if I get out of a 10-year relationship and I'm 35, suddenly my value is at 0 before when I was 25 before that relationship.
Whereas like a guy does it, it's like, oh my God, he's
on the market.
He's on the market. He's experienced. He had 10 years of relationship. He's ready. He's going to be a proper husband.
Yeah.
Like he knows what to expect. It is very different. And I think that's what brings us into our topic 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
Which,
I think this was the topic.
Yeah, but hookup culture.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, first of all, what is your definition of, let's just get into it, a whore? Like, what do you think a whore is in your eyes? You're like,
That's
whoa,
tough.
I don't want to answer this wrong.
So like one thing
I hate the word whore because it's just like, like.
One thing I will say is I find like slut, like when we say like slut, I find there's like, it's obviously like a slur and like a derogatory term and we use it in a bad way.
And we also use it very like nonchalant too, though.
But I also don't think that it's, like I think we
like, what's the equivalent for a man?
Slut.
Like, we call him a pig?
A slut,
like,
I guess, too.
I've never really hear any guy being called a slut, and that already like explains
the half of it.
I
mean, I just don't think that men get the same scrutiny over who they sleep with.
No,
as
they
women
get praised for the amount of girls they sleep with versus us. We diminish in value the more people we sleep with. And that's why we kind of wanted to talk about hookup culture, because I was listening to, I don't know, it was like a little clip on TikTok, and he was basically saying how because women control sex, we essentially have the power to stop it and to stop hookup culture. So basically, if we stop sleeping around with men, then hookup culture stops, because men have to actually work for the woman they're getting, and that they can't just say like, oh, fuck this girl, I have to invest time in her, I'm just gonna go and like sleep with her. If we're basically all on the same page, then we're basically in control of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's our fault that hookup culture essentially exists because we are the ones that give out.
I mean, the way that I see it, I think it's an interesting perspective, because if you wrapped up in that way, it's like, okay, women control sex.
But then again, it's
do
like,
we have the power?
Women, again, are being blamed for something that it's like, we're technically doing what men want and what men are looking for. So it's like, maybe if men at the same time, I don't want to blame it just on men or just on women, but it's like, if men didn't fuck any girl that they can have the opportunity to fuck, then women wouldn't feel like they need to do that in order to get a man.
Absolutely. And I think like I had this discussion, and I think the way where I stand in it and what my opinion would be is I think it's actually the fault of both.
Yeah, it is. We can't put blame on one party. Like, it takes two to tango.
Absolutely. And I can't say, oh, it's only women's fault. And I also can't say it's only men's fault. I think it's something that happened like for the force of both. So it's like we always say, like, who do you blame? The supplier or the person that's, the demander, let's say. There's always a supply and the demand. You know what I mean? Especially in drugs. It's like, do we blame the drug dealer or do we blame the drug user? Like, because the reality is the drug user is going to find it from someone else, even if that drug dealer doesn't make it accessible.
Yeah.
So it's so tough to find proper place to put the blame. And I think there's so many reasons why we are where we are right now. And I think it has to do with both sides. It has to do with women now are starting to be like, yeah, well, I can have casual sex if I want to. Like, fuck that. If you guys could sleep with anyone, then I can too. And that's totally fine. And I also think men are taking advantage of that. And it's like, perfect, I'm going to sleep with whoever I want, which then pushes the bar, because now it's no longer just like, let's have sex before marriage. It's like, let's fuck a billion girls. And, you know, I don't even ever want to have a committed relationship.
Which I think is why there is so many less committed relationships
exactly.
now.
And it's tough to say like, oh, if women stop sleeping with people, then men would also stop asking for it, because it wouldn't be like that. People would find it other ways. And that's the perfect example of why I feel one of the reasons hookup culture exists is because we have this like knowledge that as a girl, it's like, if you don't hook up with this person, they're just going to go find someone else. And it feels very hard to have a relationship these days
because
without
of that.
having sex.
It's really, really hard. And I
Yeah.
feel like even if you're somebody, let's say for me, who doesn't want to hook up at the beginning and really wants somebody to like invest in me before I even give out, it's really hard when like hookup culture is so big right now, and it's like, well, somebody else is willing to give it, so like I kind of feel the pressure of like, well, if somebody else is willing to give it, then like should I give it up?
Yeah.
But then it's like, you know, of knowing kind of like your values, and then realizing that there is going to be somebody out there who is going to value the fact that like I don't want to just give it up to just anyone, and they have to really invest in me first. So I think in that beat, it's like, yeah, you stand out technically well and special, and you look better, I guess, maybe not the right way to say it, look better than, you know, the people who are giving it right away. Like I might be looked at a little bit more serious, and men might respect me more in the long run. But in the meantime, they're just running through all these girls.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's tough. It's like, yeah, it might make me look better for the person I'm going to end up with. But in the meantime, it's
much more difficult.
It's
to
much
date.
more difficult to date.
Yeah. And the reality, what I don't agree with is I think there's this whole thing of hookup culture and casual sex, and men are banking on the fact that women want to have casual sex now, but then also putting them down and totally taking their value away if they are having casual sex. Now it's like, if your body count is high, you're a whore, you're this, you're that, but yet these are the same guys that are sleeping with all these girls.
And they're making it a mission to sleep with them.
Yeah.
So it's like, before they sleep with them, they want to fuck them. And then once they do, it's like, then they're whores for doing it. Which is so fucked up, because it takes two people in order to have sex. And if one person can enjoy sex, why can't the other person without being called a name? Like, why is a man, and like I get it, like people say like, oh well, a man is credited for doing it because they can't just sleep with anyone, and they need to get the authorization, I guess, from the other person. But it's really a weird and fucked up like kind of mentality. And I always think in a situation, there's always two sides, and it's never just one. It's like Veronica said, it's always supply to demand. Like, even if but we always get like the kind of like, because we're opening the legs, that it feels like we're the demand.
Yeah.
You know? So like, we forget the idea of like, why are women, let's really dive into it. Why are women opening their legs?
I think it's because we have no other, like, we have to adapt to the times, and we're up against all these people.
Yeah, but then
and
it's
if
like,
we don't do it.
But then we don't do that, and then it's
also, but see, you know what's funny is like, I think right now there's such a, you know, it's such a big scandal about like body count and girls with high body count, and all these guys want these girls with a body count of 1. And I'm like, okay, what's your body count though? Like, that's what I don't get. It's like, you guys are banking off the idea that you guys are, you know,
you're basically playing chat roulette.
Yeah.
You're playing chat roulette on like whatever falls, whatever you get. But then you're also trying to find like
the one girl who doesn't,
the one girl that
and she's special.
The one girl that is not somebody you've been chasing this entire time.
Like, the way that I see it is like, if guys really did value traditional relationships and wanted a girl who only slept with one person, then I don't think that they should be chasing after all these girls to just sleep with. If you want that kind of dynamic, and you want a girl that's like pure and doesn't really sleep around, then you should be doing the same thing. I'm sorry. How do you want us to survive in a world when all that's being asked from us is sex and casual sex over and over again, and then turn around and say, yeah, well, I want somebody who hasn't slept with the whole world? Well, no, we need to work together in this. So there needs to be an adaptation somewhere. If we all decide as a society that high body counts are bad, perfect, let's go back to having sex after marriage, and we all need to have that value as a society in general.
Yeah.
If you want to say we can have casual sex and that's cool, no
then
problem.
the same
Then
rule
yeah.
applies for everybody.
You can't point the finger after and say, well, your body count is XYZ and you're not suitable for me anymore. Well, who made that way? Who's making this okay to do? Both parties are at fault. I think there needs to be, it's just like there's a big discrepancy over like guys want casual sex, but then they want a girl who hasn't had sex with anyone. And then women want to have casual sex as well, but then they're seen as low value if they do have that.
We also learn through experience, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I slept with 3 people. I haven't, you know, but am I selective of who I decide to sleep with and decide to open up for? Absolutely. That still doesn't mean I have a body count of 3 people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, in order to get to the stage where like you realize your value, normally it takes a few frogs.
Yeah. And we're also not at the time anymore where people are investing themselves the same way. It's very different in our parents' generation to have a body count of 1 when guys had to go above and beyond just to get a date with you, and it had to be this whole thing, and then they're really invested in you. Now we invest in someone and the relationship doesn't work out and we're back on the dating field. So yeah, there's way less investment going on here and way more risk. You know what I mean? Like, you think you're going to be with someone forever. Like, you know, I've had boyfriends, I thought I was going to marry them, and yeah, my body count could have ended there had we get married. But that didn't happen because that's not what life is anymore. It isn't the I'm going to go above and beyond and sing songs outside your window and we're going to be together forever. That's not what it is. So obviously that's going to reflect on how many people we're dating, how many people we're sleeping with, that whole culture.
Yeah.
And I think it's honestly very toxic to be in that sense because it's like you feel like you have no choice but to hook up with people, to get to know people and to start dating.
Yeah.
And yet when you do that, when you're actually trying to get closer to your person, you're only getting further because people are starting to look at you as less valuable because you've been with more people.
Yeah. And I feel like I just want to state from all of this, because I feel like men might listen to this and be like, oh, they just have this whole reasoning behind all of this because like they clearly have a high body count and we're coming off like defensive. And the truth is like, we don't imagine and we still feel this way.
Yeah.
So like, could you imagine how somebody who does feels? Can you imagine how somebody, and then again, there's like shame in like, if you do have 1 body count, well then it's like, oh, like, do you really want to be with a girl who's also like not experienced? It's like, either way, shame on you.
Yeah. We're basically losing either way, and men are basically winning because they can either be with the girl who's super experienced with a high body count or the girl with 1, and they could have done whatever they wanted in their life. So it's like, it's really hard, and I think it's at fault for both people, and I think there needs to be some sort of middle ground where we either are okay with something or we're not, and we set the standard right, because it's extremely hard to date like at this point. And now it's like, this kind of culture almost overinflates the importance of body count and almost makes it as like a requirement, as like a good person requirement. You know what I mean? It's like if she has more than a body count of 3, like I don't want her. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, you think that's how you're going to find your wife? Like, I can tell you, I know a lot of shitty people that were virgins, and I also know a lot of shitty people that have body counts of 50. Like, it doesn't mean you're better or worse of a person.
Yeah.
So it's just, I feel like we have such a skewed perception, and there needs to be some sort of like evening out, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of competition too between women too, of like, oh wow, you're a whore. Everyone always thinks the grass is greener on the other side, which
We are the grass.
I mean, tends to be true. But if your grass is being mowed with some really good tools, I could probably say that you have the better grass. So if you want to have the greenest and the best grass of all
in the neighborhood,
you need to be using Manscaped, because they are the best in below the waist grooming for men. So get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0, get yourself the Performance Package, get yourself everything you need to be trimmed, smelling good, and having soft, freshly trimmed balls.
So use our discount code ChemicalX at checkout to receive 20% off your entire order and free shipping, so that all your neighbors could be knocking at your door. Brings me back to before, like, what do you consider a definition of a whore?
I don't even know.
I feel like a whore is somebody who will go against how they actually feel and sleep around with people that it's like meaningless, they don't feel anything towards, and they don't truly fully want to do it. I think if you absolutely want to do it, go do it. It doesn't make you a whore. It makes you want to like enjoy sex and have sex. I think you become a whore when you're having sex with people that you're just doing it and it's unfulfilling and it's not giving you anything you want and you're just continuously doing it, and it's just creating this hookup culture on our end, for example.
I think like the shit that sucks is like we
if we Google it, what is a whore?
I think for me, a whore is someone who sleeps with other girls' boyfriends. That's for me, like, you're a fucking whore. Because it's
God. We're really diving into this.
No, but like that for me, if you're gonna ask me what I think of a whore, that's a whore. I don't care if your body count is 1 and it's my fucking boyfriend. The fact that you're sleeping with someone's man, you're a fucking whore. You get what I'm saying?
Okay,
that
wait.
for me pisses me off.
Hold
if
on,
you're
though.
sleeping with somebody,
hold on. Does that make the woman a whore, or does that make the man a man eater? Because like, are we really coming at the girl now for being? That's what gets tricky. It's are we coming at the woman who might be she might have been what do you call it? Like,
manipulated?
She might have been. Yeah, she's probably been manipulated.
Let me make this clear. There's some girls that I know.
A prostitute is the definition.
There's some girls that I know that specifically go after people who are taken. They love that. They love to like be a homewrecker. They love to do that shit. In my opinion, that's what a real whore is. For me, somebody that sleeps around, has a body count of 100, I wouldn't say you're a fucking whore. Sleep with who you want. If you're happy, you're happy. Congratulations.
So
I
a
really
whore
don't
for
care.
you, a whore for you in your eyes is somebody who sleeps around with other men's boyfriends, but
with other women.
with other women's.
I think it's actually somebody who sleeps around with bad intentions. Does that make sense?
Oh, I think that makes a lot more sense, because
Like
the other
bad
one
intentions.
can be, the other one's hard to, because look, the thing is like the woman who might be doing it and like sleeping with somebody's man might be doing it for reasons bigger than the actual man, and it might be to like have security, to have money. Like it might not actually have to do with even the sex of the partner. I know that there's some people who will do it just to get a thrill out of it, and it's like, let me see if I can get them, and then they do, and then they feel like they're fulfilled, but then they end up going home and then they're sad as well. So they think it's going to fulfill them and then it doesn't.
Right.
But I also think that sometimes people do it because of like the financial benefit of like having the life of like, you know, like not having to do anything publicly, still owning your own life, doing it secretly, and living like a double life, and having like the financial that a man is providing them. So that's when it becomes difficult, because it's like, what are the reasons for being essentially a whore? What if it's like to take care of your family, and like it's
Look,
tough. I know what you're saying. It's just like, it's so tough to even say what the definition of a whore is, because I truly believe everyone to their core is a good person, and it's tough. But I agree with you.
I just don't believe that a whore has to do with your body count. I don't
Absolutely
believe,
not.
like, that's my belief. It's like, it's not like after you hit this number, you get into whore level. Like, I don't believe that. I don't even believe that sleeping around with people or being called a slut, there doesn't need to be a bad meaning to that. If you want to be slutty and want to sleep around with people, fucking do what you want. Be a slut. I don't care. Like, vibe. Like, you're a vibe if you're a slut, and you're a vibe if you're prude as well. Like, do whatever you want to do that makes you happy. I think as soon as you start doing it for bad intentions, that for me is like, ugh. Like, that grosses me out. But I don't think having a high body count makes you a whore. I think you could be slutty. I think you could even be a slut and it not be a bad thing. I think there's a lot of guys that I'm like, yeah, you're a fucking slut. You sleep with everybody. But like, go off. If it's fun for you and you're having a good time, go off. The same with a girl. I have friends that are a lot more promiscuous and they love to sleep around, casual sex. Do what you want. You could be a slut. Vibe slut. Like, Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be like, you're a fucking slut because you did this.
But do you feel like even as women, we look at those girls, they don't really know their value? Like, we respect them a little less.
I think the only time where we start looking at women and start saying you're a whore is when they do something with bad intentions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think we look at a girl and be like, oh, her body count is this. Wow, what a whore.
Yeah, like whenever a girl says, oh, like she sleeps with everyone, it's because there's some kind of tied.
She slept with your ex. That's what you're saying.
She slept with somebody that was like in your inner circle, and it just seems like a personal thing.
Exactly. I don't think women go out of their way to be like, ew, like slut.
We'll be like, go get that dick, like do your thing, basically. As long as it doesn't hurt my fence, then we're good.
100%. And that's why I just think like, when people do it for bad intentions, that's where you become like a bad person to me.
And what makes a guy a whore?
I think the same. I think a fuckboy.
I think what makes a guy a whore, and what I have no problem with a guy being truly honest and being like, look, I just want to fuck. I don't want anything serious. And then it's like, if the woman becomes crazy and she takes that how she takes it, and then she can't, like, she tries to like change the fuck boy into like a guy who's just going to commit to her, it's like, you know what you signed up for. He told you, he was straight up about it. Then I don't think that makes him a whore. I think it makes him a whore when he starts to like plant seeds in women's heads.
Just to sleep with them.
Just to sleep with them, and like makes it apparent that like he's going to date them, and like he's doing the same thing to many other women. Then I think like it's unacceptable, because now you're playing with the emotional part of women's feels. Then I think like you're a whore, because it's like you can easily, but then the fight can be like, are they doing that in order to get into a woman's mind, into a woman's pants?
Yeah, but should you do that?
No, absolutely not. But will they get pussy if they don't?
Yeah.
That's the whole debate.
I mean, I think, yeah. And if you have to like lie your way into sleeping with somebody, you probably shouldn't be sleeping with them.
You know what, from I guess past experience, I feel like the more you tell a guy like, I'm not dating you, like I just want to fuck and you're honest, the more they're like, I'm going to be the one to change him. So you know what, actually? I think the one who's a whore is the one who says, I don't want anything. Because then the woman's like, I'm going to be the one to change him.
Wait till he sees me. Wait till he sees what I can do.
I'm going to be the one who changes his world. And it's like, sweetie, baby, at the end of the day, I'm a hole, you're a hole. It's nuts. This episode really took a turn. Like it always does.
I just think like, yo, do what you want to do. And if you want to, and I had said this in the past about body count, if you value body count, like, and you really do, I have no problem with that. But like, just find someone who matches that value. Like, don't come around with a 200 body count and then say, I want a girl with 2. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut your fucking ass.
I totally agree with you.
You know what I mean? You don't get to do that, because then it's like, well, you don't respect yourself.
But the thing
is,
if
I don't respect myself, what are you?
Yeah,
you're
and
just
like
as trash as me.
And like we're always growing too, right? What if there was a point in our lives where we didn't value ourselves, and like we were really going through something, and now we've kind of like found our light, found who we are, and we're not that person anymore. Like it's like we almost don't give people the opportunity and chance to like change and be better versions of themselves, because it's like once you're labeled, that's who you are, and there's no changing that. And it's like you could be someone who's been like fucked over 1,000,000 times and had fuck boys be the ones to make you essentially a whore, and then you can completely change, have a different mindset, and then not be that person. But like, it's so hard to like change that. But I feel like it's so accepted for a guy to be like, he used to be a fuck boy.
Like, now I'm ready to settle down.
And now he's so ready to settle down. He's just looking for Mrs. Right. Whereas like, I don't feel like we ever hear that for a woman who's like, oh, she used to be a whore and now she wants to get knocked down. It's like, nah, that girl's trash. She's been everywhere. Like, it's literally just not the same.
Yeah. And like, that's where I think the same way we were talking about like feminism and dates and stuff like that, that's where I feel like we're at the head to head when it comes to hookup culture.
I never really looked at it that way. It's at an all-time high right now, because just if we look at like the generation of our parents, it was not like that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why there's always this like,
I think it balances out eventually.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it could still balance out like in today's world.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's more like somebody compromising, and like that's what a relationship essentially is, regardless of what generation we're in. But yeah,
I think it's just as we go and as we grow, it's going to be different. I think our generation has been through the hardest times, because we've grown up before social media, right? We were all born before social media. So our parents, parents' generation was all very, very traditional. So now it's like we're now in this mix of hookup culture, traditional versus non-traditional, and we're constantly clashing. There's so much clash that happened in our generation right now that I don't feel like happened the same for our parents, and isn't going to happen for the people under us.
What do you think is going to happen for our kids? Like, if we have kids, like, I still feel like the man should be the protector, the provider, which like stresses me out actually now that I think about it, because it's like if we are moving in a more like 50-50 dynamic, then I just wonder how that's going to be for our kids.
I think it's just the fear of the unknown. So like for you, it's very hard for you to imagine a life without it. Whereas I think as we grow, you'll be able to see why it makes sense. If it would grow into that area, you'd be like, oh, this is so good. And like the way that I see it is like, I want to raise my kids to be able to hold their own, whether it's a kid, like a girl or a guy. I want to raise my daughter to be fully good on her own and never have to feel like she needs to give herself up for a man or needs to do something to get a man. Because the reality is I want my kids to be happy. So if that means, you know, having a man take care of her, no problem. But if it means being good on her own, then that's good as well. So like, I just think like as we grow, it's going to make more sense.
Yeah.
So for us,
it's like a little harder to see now.
It's harder to see now for sure, because we're so used to a specific type of dynamic. But I think like at the end of the day, again, women and men are different. We're equal, but we're different. We deserve the same opportunities. We deserve the same equal rights, but we're different people. And men have this predisposition to be more protective. They're bigger, they're stronger in a sense, and they'll always be the protectors of women. And women do have our biological ability to give birth, to give life. You can't take that away from us, right? So I think we, no matter how far we go into equality and feminism and 50-50, there will always be differences that will benefit each other, kind of. So it's like we are nurturing and men protect us. Like these are like our biological values that won't go away no matter how much money we make. Women will still be the ones to give birth, you know? So I think there's always going to be that like that balance, that like yin and yang of like, that's always going to be there. But then like, again, as we grow, now it's like there's same-sex relationships. There's so many different types of relationships. So relationships itself are changing. There's much more genders now. Like all these things play into whatever the future is going to hold. So it's going to be much harder to just be like, this is a man's role, this is a woman's role, because we have a lot more like 2 women dating, 2 men dating, and like how do they take those gender roles upon themselves?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about social media because we're lucky in a way because we kind of grew up with social media at a time where we didn't have it and then we had it. Like, I feel like I remember being like 16 and then like Instagram started. So we still kind of lived a childhood, you know, where we were still like kind of having to figure out how to have our own fun without social media, essentially.
Right.
We kind of had the best of, I don't want to say both worlds, but there's definitely no doubt in saying like a lot of people are more insecure. There's so much access to seeing what other people are doing that it's hard to live a life where you're like happy with what you're doing. And I feel like I even like struggle with that a little bit now. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be like when like I have kids of my own, like always feeling like there's more out there. You could be doing something else. And what's also scary is that like you literally only live one life and there's so many things that you could do in this one life and you can't do it all. And that's stressful too. It's like, how do you live a life where like you feel like, I remember you actually posted what was it, like a story, and I was like, wow, that's so true. Like
it's honestly, it's what keeps me up at night.
no I was
but it's
like,
just about how like there's so many different lives that you could live,
Yeah.
and like the stress is picking one of them. Like, do I want to be the girl who lives by the beach? Do I want to be the big city girl who moves to New York and gets a job there? Do I want to be the girl who settles down and raises a family? Like, there's so many different options that you could be, and choosing one feels like the scariest thing in the world because you feel like you're giving up on all those other versions of you.
so like that whole situation is how I feel like I'm stressed the new generation is gonna feel. Like now we're able to kind of catch it and be like, okay, don't be stupid, like be lucky for what you have. But it's scary to think about when even more is gonna be accessible. Then like, how do you not feel like that times like 300?
Yeah, and I think like the generation under us, like, you know, we always laugh and say, yeah, they're the most depressed generation. They have anxiety, they have all these diseases, but it's like, you know what though? Like growing up from literally young with the influence of social media, we don't know what that's like because we didn't live like that, right?
Yeah.
So we can't sit here and say anything because we didn't live that. And that's what's scary is like when things are so new, we don't know how they're going to affect us. Like it's, for example, like think of smoking, okay? Like when smoking first came like to be, like was first invented, it was like the sick thing to do. It was like marketed as like, do you want to be cool? You should smoke. Doctors recommend smoking. It's so not bad for you. It's actually good for you. Like if you would look back on smoking ads now, you would fucking fall off your chair, right? Because now to this day, we know how bad it is for you and we know it kills you. But it had to take like hundreds of years for us to figure that out, right? Well, not hundreds of years, but like definitely a lot of years, like 80 years or something to figure that out. So like I think of that with social media. It's like right now we
But
don't
then we can
see
also
the
think
harm.
like technology, it won't take us 80 years now to figure out the
yeah.
because
But it's just like
yeah.
it's you never really know the impact until later on, and that's what's scary. It's like we don't know how like everyone's gonna grow up. We don't know what's coming for us. It's still all so new. Even our kids, it's still gonna be quite new, you know? So but the reality is like the world evolves and it adapts, and there's always going to be things that are changing and always things that are going to make our life hard.
Hard and like things that are always going to be better. But yeah, I was just like thinking about that and I'm like, it's such like not a good way to think like, what is it going to be like when we're the moms, you know?
I always
but
think like,
it's
am I gonna
fucking-
let my kid have a phone? Am I gonna let my kid have a laptop? And I always want to be like, you're not having a phone until you're 16.
It's
but
so,
then I'm like,
I know.
you also
I
cannot
always,
do that.
I
you
always
have
think
to
about that. Like my
adapt.
parents were always the kind of parents who were like always tried to push things longer than it felt like growing up like a little bit of an attack. Like
Yeah.
I always got my phone like later than everyone else, and like looking back now, like I'm happy they did that, you know, but
It's hard to understand.
it's
as
so
a kid.
hard to understand that as a kid. It's like,
Yeah.
do you fit yourself into the mold of society for your kid to kind of live more normal, or do you push the
Knowing-
boundary
yeah.
and like make them learn?
It's so tough, and I feel like there's no right decision.
There's literally no book on motherhood. I'll tell you that.
I mean, there is, but
There is, but then again, everyone has a different experience.
absolutely. And it's like, it's so hard because I don't feel like there's ever a right decision. Like anything you do, there's going to be pros and cons. So it's like, you know, it's with everything in this whole conversation. It's like you stay traditional, there's going to be pros and cons. You be, you know, you're evolved and you're more modern and you sleep around, there's going to be pros and cons. Like there's pros and cons to everything. And like, that's the fucking reality.
Yeah.
Like,
Could you imagine I'm talking about having a kids when I can't even find a guy I want to settle down with? That's so funny for me to think ahead. Like unless you find yourself a man first.
I had a big debate about whether men or women wanted more committed relationships. And I actually looked into statistics and it honestly surprised me.
Men
because-
more?
Not men more, but definitely more than what I thought. I thought that like men would be way less likely to want to have a committed relationship. But I think
I would. I think
think-
it's more women who leave men, so I think it would definitely be more men who seek commitment more. No?
yeah, well, I think women have more options. So like when we want commitment, we know we could get it.
But I hate that too. Like women have more options. Do we though?
Yes.
Do we?
we do.
Do we though?
I feel like
But then it's like it's so easy for men to be like, we have more options, but do we actually though? Is there actually
quality options?
Is there quality options? Like I don't feel like us women we like faint into the thought of like being with the first person we see. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah, okay, at the beginning dating is like fun. You think there's so many options, but then when it really comes down to like actually settling down and being with a good partner, I don't feel like there's that many options. Don't bring that negativity, Alessia. Not before you find your husband.
Yes, but it's just I don't know. I think it's like I think we look at men, but we look at just a certain tier of men, and we look at these men who can get any girl they want, who have this, have money, have like good looks, and like that's just a really small percentage of what makes up of actual men. And I think most men are like very lonely. Like actually I was looking at the statistics, and like men are like way more likely to like be lonely and depressed than women because like they can't get a woman. Like for most men, like it's actually hard to get a girl, right? So like these guys want to just have a committed relationship, and I think we base ourselves a lot off this like small percentage of like fuck boys that do sleep around and do get girls, but I don't think that it speaks for like the wide
So true.
range of like who men are, you know. So it's like
Yeah.
it's tough. It's we can only speak off what we know, but actually what we know is not the average.
And it's skewed to what we've been around.
Exactly,
too.
right. So it's really tough. It's really tough.
Really,
it's so
really
hard to talk about
tough.
anything.
I know, because we're literally just talking about like maybe 5%.
I know.
Like Dr. Short said, there's 5%.
5% revision.
5% revision. And in the grand scheme of things, 5% is a lot.
But like I still think that there's good men and good women out there. I just think like people need to focus less on like these rules and these
And I
like,
also think people need to focus less on like looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like more than ever now. Like I don't give a fuck. Like I don't want the fucking hottest guy. I don't. I really don't. And it's really more and more and more and more and more apparent as the years go by. And it's more and more about just like being treated properly.
Yeah.
Less and less about looks. Like I swear to God, I it's like I find beauty in somebody who's like not really cute because of just like the way
Their personality.
they're funny, the way they like treat you, the way they're like they compose themselves. Like it's really awfully like it's when I was younger, swear to God, shady. Like it was all about looks. Like, and I think that's just how women are. The older we get, the more we're just like, I don't give a fuck.
I think men too like tend to stop caring about looks a
Which
little
is
bit as they grow
it's like
older.
nice to hear for
Yeah.
sure.
I just wish they would stop. I think the body count thing is getting old.
Yeah, I also do think though that it's not every man who thinks like that, and I think
Yeah.
it's like really just like more insecure men who talk about body
sure.
count. Do you really we're talking about this whole body count and I'm already like manifesting in my head. I'm like, the type of guy I'm gonna meet, and this is me not even having a high body count, is never gonna even ask me. He's not even gonna care. He's gonna literally just want to focus on what we are today.
Absolutely.
Not about who I was fucking 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, it's really about what are we building now. It's not about the past. I hate dwelling on the past.
Absolutely.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I focus too much on the future.
And I do agree. I think that there is a sense of insecurity that comes from it. And it's like you're scared you can't match up. You're scared of these things. And guys will always say, yeah, but it like shows on your character and it shows on this. And it's like, if I had a bad character, you'd notice it in many other ways than just my body count. Like having a body count of 60 is not going to make me more or less of a good person if I'm a good person in every other way. You know what I mean? Like if I was a bad person, you'd notice it in other ways. So it's just, I think it's old, and I think it doesn't match like whatever's going on right now. And I think we need to evolve, and that's something we need to evolve in, where it's like, if we're gonna all agree that no one values sex the same way we used to, and there's no more like waiting till marriage, then like we also can't put these on like unrealistic expectations on everyone, because then you're forcing, half these girls are lying about their body count just to get a man. And it's like, I could sit here and lie, you would never know. And that's the reality. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. You know what? I actually just thought about it. I'm like, wait, maybe there's something here. But you know how I just said, like, I don't look at looks the same way anymore. Like, I truly don't feel like I'm the only one who thinks like that. I think the older you get, the more you're just like, I want to be treated well, which makes me think that the good looking guys are probably even having a harder time. Right? No, like,
I don't think they're having a hard
You're like,
I think
relax
good looking
there.
guys are always still
Well,
good looking. I just think that they're forced to work on
but
their
I'm saying that
personality.
if there's like a lot more people like me who care more about like stability and like somebody that they can like have a partner with, and it's less about looks, then I do believe if there's a lot of people like me, then we're actually going for the same guys, which is still creating the same difficulty, right?
The same ugly good guys.
Fuck. So now like the good guys, I mean the hot guys are having a hard time.
I think they're okay. But that does bring me to a point.
I think that they deal with other things after.
Yeah. But there is a point.
Because then it's like, let's say they're fucking every girl because they could. They're also feeling not fulfilled, right? Because then they're having a hard time having a meaningful relationship. Anyway, just thought of that.
Well,
I guess in any way you're never winning.
You're always losing.
I think we learned that a long time ago.
Everyone's always losing.
Way to look at it. Is the glass half empty or half full?
Is empty. The whole glass is empty.
We're not even like the glass is. We're not sure. It's empty and there's not even a speck of fucking water left.
But there was a debate that I had about, why, because I was talking about how like I think the whole caring about body count is an immaturity thing, and how like usually older guys tend to really not give a fuck, and I think it comes from experience of like realizing over time that people are either good or they're bad, and it doesn't matter what their body count is.
I've been with a girl who's had fucking one body count and it didn't work out,
and then I've been with a girl who had, so like I think it comes to experience,
and it still didn't work out.
But then the argument was that, okay, but like if you're saying that, do you think it's just because guys need to settle now and they're more willing to settle for someone with a higher body count because they have less options? And I was like, okay, that's a fair point as well. But I actually just think that it comes from a place of like maturing and growing and realizing that somebody's body count isn't actually has anything to do with them. And I think that's why the older guys get, the less they value body count. And I'm sure you're going to meet a bunch of older guys and be like, that's such a stupid thing to even ask. Like, it doesn't matter. And I don't think it comes out of like desperation. I think it actually comes out of just experience.
100%. That was nailed to the T. And I think that's why a lot of people just like a little bit older men, because they're experienced. So,
and they know what they want.
And they go after it, and they're not scared to. Okay, guys. Well, I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted.
Like, I'm glad you brought yourself water, but I got no water bottle here. I don't know what this service is at this household, but it's not chill and it's not fair. So I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna hang up.
Find the hole.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode on feminist. What's a whore? Hookup culture.
And we'll see you next week.